So this is a test question right here. I will give you the 3 vertices of a triangle with their coordinates, just like this, and I will say, find the coordinates of the either circumcenter, orthocenter, or centroid. So the first thing that you got to do, looking at the question, it says find the coordinates of the circumcenter. You need to go think through your head. Okay, circumcenter. What special segments and triangles create or are concurrent and make the circumcenter? And that is what? Perpendicular bisector. So on the test, you're thinking, all right, for this question, I am all about perpendicular bisectors right now. And so you need to determine the equations of this triangle's perpendicular bisectors. Let's first get a little quick sketch. I can see that B is at the origin at 0, 0. And then I see that C is at 0, 20. Okay, so the x-coordinate is 0, and the y-coordinate is way up here at 20. Then I see that point A, its x-coordinate is -3, so you go -3 over here, and then the y-coordinate is 0, so it's just going to stay right there on the x-axis. So this is just a quick sketch of what this triangle is going to look like. First off, make sure that you've copied the coordinates correctly when you draw your diagram, because if you mess up any of these numbers and you use that wrong number on your calculations, then you have no hope, you have no chance of figuring out the correct coordinates for the circumcenter. So take your time, check your values. So I've got A at -3, 0, good. I've got B at 0, 0, the origin, good. I got C at 0, 20. Okay, I copied down my my coordinates correctly. So the 2 things you absolutely need to have in order to write the equation of any line is, first off, a point that it goes through. A point that this line is going to go through. That does not have to be the y-intercept. You just need any point that this line contains. So, talking about the perpendicular bisectors, what point do we know these special segments, these lines, must contain? The midpoint of the 3 triangle sides. So, find those. If you know you need the midpoints, find them all. So the midpoint of segment AB is going to be -3/2, 0. Just taking averages. -3/2, 0. The midpoint of segment CB is going to be 0, 10. And then the midpoint of segment AC is going to be -3/2, 10. -3/2, 10. Does everyone agree with these values for midpoint? Awesome. So just like I did with the altitudes, just like I did with the medians, you find a point that these segments have to go through, and then I'm just going to list those 3 points. And I'm just creating columns that I can show all of my work as I write these equations. So these are the 3 midpoints. And again, just double check and make sure that you do have the correct values. You don't want to make any silly mistakes or use wrong numbers as you go through. Alright. Now, this first perpendicular bisector, I have a point that it goes through. It is the midpoint. But what about the slope? That's the second thing you need to know and when you're writing the equation of the line. How do you determine the slope of this perpendicular bisector that's going through this midpoint? How do we do that? Perfect. So you need to find the slope of the side that this is its midpoint. Right? So if I'm going to write the equation of a perpendicular bisector that goes through this midpoint, then I first need to find the slope of this side and then take the negative reciprocal so that it will be perpendicular to that side. So for this midpoint, I need to find its segment's slope. And so this would be segment AC. Well, I see that it rises up 20 and it goes its run would be a -3. In the end, you get a negative, there you go. Come on, Aaron, I got this. It's a positive slope, and it's a positive 20/3. So, we need the perpendicular slope, because it needs to be perpendicular to this segment AC. And so that would be a -3, 20. Yes?
Yep.
Awesome. So now once you have the slope of the line and at least one point that it goes through, then plug it into the point slope formula. Which is y minus y1 equals slope m times the quantity x minus x1, where x1 and y1 are the coordinates of the point that it has to go through, and m is the slope that you found. So plug in these values. I got y minus 10 is equal to my slope, which is negative 3 over 20 times x. When you subtract a value, well, you have to take whatever value x1 is. If I look up here, x1 is a negative 3/2, so I need to subtract a negative 3/2. Whenever you subtract a negative value, that's like adding a positive. So I'm going to switch that sign to positive. What's the very, very first thing I got to do after I plug in my values? You have to distribute. You got to get rid of those parentheses. So this is going to be y minus 10 is equal to a negative 3/20 x minus 9 over 40. Then I'm going to add 10 on both sides. Well, the whole number 10, represented as a fraction with 40 as its denominator, would be 400 over 40. Correct?
Yes.
So what I'm doing in my head is I'm just converting the positive, well, we're going to add 10. So what I'm doing in my head is I'm just converting positive 10 into a fraction whose denominator is 40. So that would be 400 over 40. So when I combine these like terms, I'm going to get a positive 391 over 40. Y is equal to negative 3 over 20x plus 391 over 40. Anyone else get that equation? Sweet. Okay. If you find a mistake, let me know. I'm human. Like, I can make mistakes. Maybe I added something wrong. Maybe I distributed something wrong. Like, just let me know. Be polite. Okay, now we got to find the equation, the perpendicular bisector that goes through this midpoint, which would be the midpoint of segment CB. So if this is the midpoint of segment CB, then I got to find its slope and then take the negative reciprocal. What's the slope of segment CB? Undefined. So what would be the slope that would be perpendicular to this? 0. I know that if a line has a slope of 0, what is the equation going to look like? If it's 0, it's horizontal. Keep your z's together. If it's horizontal, that is y equals some value. Well, if it's going through this point at x value 0, y value 10, then that's real easy. This is going to be y equals 10. That is the equation of the perpendicular bisector of segment CB. The next one. This is the midpoint of segment AB. So I need to find the slope of segment AB. What is it? 0. It's a horizontal line with 0 slope. So what would be the slope that's perpendicular to it? Undefined. And the equations of lines with an undefined slope are in what form? X equals some value. Well, in order to find what that value equals, you got to look at your point that it goes through, which would be negative 3/2. Yes, ma'am.
If you do those two first and you already have like the x and y coordinate, do you even have to do this whole time?
It depends on what the instructions say on the test. If I ask for all 3 equations, then yes, I need to see all 3 equations. If I just ask you to find the coordinates of the circumcenter, then no, I don't need to see all 3. You can just stop here and tell me that the circumcenter is at negative 3/2. So now that I have my 3 equations, I need to solve systems of equations and figure out where this circumcenter is going to end up at. And for this, it's very simple. Y is 10, x is negative 3/2. So my C for circumcenter, nope, we already have a point C, never mind. I'm going to call it Q. Q. So this circumcenter is at negative 3/2, 10. Please look at your chart. Please look at your chart, the point of concurrency chart. Can someone tell me what kind of triangle this is? What's that?
Triangle.
It's a right triangle because this has a slope of 0, this has a slope that's undefined, so therefore these two segments are perpendicular, which makes this triangle a right triangle. Where does the circumcenter lie when you have a right triangle? On the hypotenuse. Be a little bit more specific. Where on the hypotenuse? So we just algebraically prove that to ourselves, that yes, if you have a right triangle, then the circumcenter will be at the hypotenuse's midpoint.